Hey, I'm Piera,
And I'm Harley.
and we are casually.
Mental.
Ooh.
A new mental today. Everyone, I would like you to meet our first guest on our show, Sid Raskind. He and
Woo.
me went to high school together and then college together. And then we both moved to LA and have known each other forever. And he became TikTok famous I'll let you explain what you do, Sid, but it's an awesome, awesome thing. And we are so excited to have him on the show today.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me, both of you. This is so much fun. Just like you said, Harley, we went to high school together. We did not go to middle school together, but it's okay. So high school, college, and then we moved to Los Angeles pretty much around the same time. And then we ran into each other at a party like 4 weeks ago and freaked out.
Oh my
And yeah,
gosh.
that I became internet famous in the last like couple years, and now
But we have been seeing
I'm on
each
your
other before
podcast.
then. I know. It's so funny too, because when we ran into each other at the party, Piero was with me as well. So it's kind of fun. It was like right before we had started our podcast too, and we were kind of telling you about what we were doing. And I think
Yeah.
before we even get into why we asked you onto the show, I would love to dig a little deeper into like what was the mental? Because Piera always asks me whenever I say mental, she goes, what did that mean? So what did your mental mean today?
What did my mental mean today? My mental meant today being a little bit irritated with some videos that I had to deliver and upload, and then my daughter, the blessing that she is in the world, only slept for 47 minutes for the first nap.
Oh,
And then we're just, in a tizzy, getting everything ready for this little party we're gonna have tomorrow. So it's pretty exciting. So my mental is like 7 out of 10 good. 8 out of 10. I would say 8 out of 10.
Wow. Yeah, that's great.
that sounds very great. Well, then let's just go into it. So after we saw each other at this party, me and Sid were kind of catching up because we hadn't seen each other since before COVID. And I
Yeah.
was like asking about his life, and he told me about what had been going on. And he was like, but I'm never going to talk about it. I'm never going to share with anybody. It's something like it's my own burden to bear. And, me and Pierre were like, no, Sid, like, it's so good to be open. Like, do it. And then, of course, like literally a month ago, all of a sudden
Yep.
on Sid's Instagram channel, which of course has 1 million followers, he started talking about, what he had been going through in his mental health state. And I was just so proud of you, Sid, when I saw you post about that. And I think I even commented to be like, I'm so proud of you because I remember
You
like
did.
you being like, I'm never going to talk about this, to like being like, I'm going to tell 1 million strangers about what's going on. And then of course you kind of kept some things in and you didn't fully like talk about it, but you did say like I'd been struggling the past few years. And I would just like, I think one of the things that a lot of people that watch our or listen to our podcast is like, a lot of people don't know how to like ask for help and don't really want to ask for help.
Yeah.
And I know I've had that issue. I know Pierre have had that issue too. So I'd love to find out like, what was those steps you took in order to feel comfortable to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually a big part of it was talking to you two at that party, which was just sort of like this catalyst that I needed in order to sort of like know that it was sort of the right call at the time. I think that for a long time, nobody really knows me on the internet besides, the things I wish I knew before I was in my 30s guy.
Which we all
And
love.
thank you. And, but now it's sort of getting to the point where it's like I've gotten to this like not plateau, but just sort of like everyone knows me as that guy, but no one knows me as Sid, right? So like my username isn't the things I wish I knew 30s guy. It's my username is Sydney Raz, right? So that's me, that's my name. So I think now it's kind of getting to the point where it's like what I wanted to do, especially after the conversation we had, was just sort of like, oh, I want people to know who I am. And that was when I think I became just sort of like more comfortable with the idea of like showcasing the fact that like I'm in therapy. I've been in therapy. I've been, living with PTSD for my entire life pretty much. And, I think that it was just sort of one of those things where, especially me as a white 30 something dude, I think a lot of people perceive me as like, again, like just sort of dealing with it, but to showcase the fact that you don't have to. You can thrive instead of survive is what I sort of started saying to myself. But like, yeah, I think therapy just sort of like got to the point where I was like, oh, I'm comfortable with talking about these things. So that's why I started
Sure.
posting.
I think that that's so powerful too, especially because there's actually statistics out there that men are a little bit less comfortable sharing stuff than women are. And so I think
Mhm.
especially like being a male on the internet who is, you know, sharing what you've been going through, I think that's so important because, you know, it's not just like a female thing. Therapy's for everybody. And I know
Yeah.
Pira, like I would love to hear about, you know, because I know you suffer from PSD too. And so I know like, and you also, you know, kind of relay it out to your followers. And so I think it's something that's just so important to like keep up and relay to people and remind people like we all have problems, we're all struggling. And
Mhm.
I know, Pierre, what
Yeah.
are your thoughts? I'd love to hear.
Yeah. I was loving listening to your story, Sid, because the first time you share, it's like, oh, I'm gonna share this thing, and like there's an online character and an online version of like what people know or don't know about you. So like
Yep.
it's amazing that you did it and like followed through, because that you could say one thing and then end up doing it. But like I feel like it's liberating once you just like put it out there, like a release. Like, did it feel like that for you when you did it?
Yeah. I mean, I think that I sort of did it in the sense of I need to let people know that like this is not like me giggling and smiling and laughing at a jar opening the right way is like not exactly the whole story, like
Yeah.
the reason why I think this content resonates is because I'm showcasing the fact that I don't know things, right? Like the ethos there is like, oh, you too. And I think that sort of speaks to the need to say like the reason I don't know these things is because I was surviving for the last, you know, 20 plus years. Since I was a
Sure.
teenager, since I was even younger than that. So it's like I'm finding out these things because I promise you, like I'm just finding these things out. So I think it was pretty liberating to say like, listen, yeah, I have PTSD. I don't know if I'm unique at all. That kind of thing. And it felt good. It was scary, like you said, and it was just like super scary.
I feel that.
Yeah.
I totally
But
feel
usually
that
people are
too.
pretty nice.
Yeah. I feel
Yeah,
like
I was gonna say, oh, sorry, go ahead. I was gonna say, like, what was people's reactions to when
Yeah.
you actually like put it out there too? Like, were people pretty nice about it? Like, did you
hmm
get a lot of good reactions? Like, what was that whole thought behind that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that generally people are really nice about it. They just want to like make sure that you're not in a state and then suffering worse when you read the comments. I think generally, I think people get more upset with me when I like you know don't know something. But I think that people, yeah, they also just like start telling their own stories and they start sort of like expressing themselves in a way that's just like there to make all of us feel like we're a part of it. And I think that was my general sort of that was like my comments reaction, my community's reaction. I think that I'm also lucky because like I am a white male. So I think that the inherent misogyny and patriarchy that comes with like shitting on people for expressing themselves doesn't happen to me as much. So I think that's like just something that is just shitty about the internet. Like if anyone else expresses themselves, they kind of like get shit on. But I think that like this thing is exempt from it in a lot of ways. So I think I don't know. That's just something to think about too.
For sure. And you know what I
Yeah.
love too, though, is like I mean, your whole thing is about like things I wish I knew when I was in my 30s. And I feel like this is
Yeah.
something where it's like people should know that like you are not stuck with your struggle. There's a million ways to get help. I think I know me and Sid go way back. And so like I think one of the things that even really got me to open up about my struggle is like I don't think people realize, and like me and you, Sid, when we were talking the other day too, like I don't think anyone realizes like how much I hated high school. Like I
Yeah.
in middle school, like I hated it. But at the same
Yeah.
time, like I was pretty cool. Like I was like homecoming princess. I won best dress. Like I was like a popular girl to say the least, but I was also friends with everybody. But I don't think people realize like how much I hated myself and how much I just hated
Yeah.
everything around me. And it took when we went to college in Richmond to finally like find people that were more like me. But I think a lot of people didn't even realize that I was like struggling because I always came off as this like happy go lucky girl. And for me, it was
Yeah.
like the first time I realized I had an issue and I wanted to start talking about it with people was literally because I was like, oh shit, like things are bad and I hit rock
Yeah.
bottom and I got myself out of it. And getting yourself out of it is like the most prideful, joyous thing that you could possibly do for yourself. And I didn't realize it just like everyone until we were in our 30s. And now I'm like,
Mhm.
oh shit, if only knew this when I was in my 20s, maybe I would have been in a better shape like in all these other years before, you know? So it's
100%.
just
Yeah.
like
I
a
mean,
funny, it's
yeah,
funny.
it was one of those things where I was in therapy once and I was like 23 or something, and I just come back from a festival, so I was very, very fucked up post festival
I'm sure that
for
was an interesting
reasons.
therapy session.
Yeah, and my therapist goes, so like, why are you doing all of these drugs? And I went, do you know how much better it feels to not feel when, especially in that moment? It is so nice to not feel. And he goes, okay, that's interesting. And we kept talking. He goes, I think you have PTSD. And I was like, what do you mean? I never went to war. What are you talking about? And
Yeah.
it was crazy when you hear it. You're
Why?
just like,
But like I feel like when I was younger too, it's like PTSD. You had to have this big major like war. Yeah, like
yeah,
if
yeah,
it's not war, it's not PTSD and it's not as
right,
serious. So like,
right.
why were we
Yeah.
taught that? But go
Now it's
ahead.
CPTSD, which is a complex PTSD. And it's basically what comes from uh, existing in like a toxic environment growing up, right? So I guess that's what it's called now. And it kind of puts a little bit more of a label on it and kind of like makes it easier to process because of how much we've associated PTSD with veterans and people that have served and um, in those different situations, and you know that comes with its own stuff. So I think just to know that it is PTSD is just sort of one of those liberating things where it's like, oh, there's a thing for this and I can like process it. Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, naming it feels like step one
Yeah,
because it's like not when you don't feel well, you're like, I don't know, and you go on WebMD. It's like it can be all these things, but once you find out it's like you have a headache or a migraine, you're like,
yeah,
oh, I mean, it might not solve the problem, but it's at least you can name it and it somehow calms you a little bit.
yeah,
But
yeah. It's
yeah,
a great feeling. I mean, it's like when I found out what disassociating was, it was like I think we might have talked about this at the party, but like my brain just like sort of short circuited. Like, there's a name for this? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
yes,
Isn't
I
that
got a tattoo.
crazy?
Like, I don't know if you can see this. Like, hang on. This I can't. Great. This is perfect for the camera.
Ooh.
But
okay.
for anyone looking at home, it's me sinking back into myself or listening at
Mm.
home. And it was just sort of one of those things where I was like, that's a thing that people have a name for? What are you talking about? And it changed my life. It absolutely changed my life. It was crazy. It was crazy.
I recently learned about disassociation also. I didn't know I was doing that most of
Yeah.
my life. Where you're just
Yeah.
like on autopilot,
Yeah.
basically. And I don't know how it works for you. I feel like it's different for everyone, but like you kind of see your body or like you're touching a thing and you're like, I'm touching a thing,
Mm-hmm.
but I
Sure.
don't feel like I like, oh man. Yeah, this is all new to me as well.
Yeah.
So
Same here. I mean, that's literally why I had to end up, I mean, I have inevitably at the end of the day quit my job because I found myself
Mm.
every single morning just waking up in the state where like I didn't want to be there. And I think
Mm-hmm.
it's not just work, it's like the people and like the communities that like and not to get into some crazy shit over here, but like since COVID, like things are not going well, you know? And I
Yeah.
think during COVID, having a chance to really sit with myself and understand like what was going on and how I felt and really dig into my emotions, it really showed me how much I too was disassociating from life. And then me and my friend call it the loop, but
Mm-hmm.
we call it the loop because you get in this loop where you don't even realize you're disassociating. You're just literally waking up doing the things to get you through the day, going to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And like
Mm-hmm.
we both call each other out when we get into the loop. So like I remember one day I was at Trader Joe's, and no shade to Trader Joe's frozen food, but like I like cooking, I like fresh ingredients. And this one day after Pilates, like I went to Trader Joe's and I just started buying all this frozen food. And I probably spent like $40 on just like the most frozen, like random frozen food. And I got home, and they're Italian. So they were like, I was showing them my frozen food, and they were like,
Were they offended?
no, get off the loop. Get off the loop right now. You're on the loop. Because they knew. And I didn't even realize I was on the loop. But like me going out and buying like a whole freezer full of freezer food just so I could sit down, work, and put it in the microwave, go to bed. Like that
Yep.
is the loop, guys. And I was just disassociating. And it's so crazy when like somebody else sees it and you don't even see it.
Yeah. I was one time
Oh,
I
yeah.
came back from a bike ride, a really, really long bike ride. And I had like these frozen pierogies or something like that, like pot stickers. And there might have been like 50 pot stickers in there. And I just ate all of them.
Oh
And
my God.
then my girlfriend, my wife now, she comes up, she goes, "What happened to all the pot stickers?" I was like, "Oh, I don't know. Actually, I think I ate
Oh
them."
my God.
And I just realized, like, and then I learned what disassociating was, and that actually is so funny that you said that, Harley, because that's what happened to me. I was disassociating so hard that I just didn't even realize I was eating all of the
So
pot
yeah.
stickers.
So pretty much when you eat a lot or you buy frozen food, like you're weirdly disassociated. Wait, Kira, have you ever had one of these circumstances?
That's weird.
I don't know. I don't know if it's food related. I'm trying to like while you two are thinking, I'm like, do I have a specific food related
I mean,
thing?
but the
where
thing
I'm
that's funny though is
disassociated?
neither of us even realized it. Like it took like somebody else who knew us really well to be like, you're disassociating. So like I think that's the craziest thing about disassociation too, is
Mhm.
like you're in the loop, you're disassociating from it, you're just doing whatever you can to get by. And I think that again is why it's so important, closing the loop of all of this, it's so important to tell people you're not okay, because
Mhm.
those people that are closest to you are going to be the ones that are like, oh shit, this is not you. Like you don't buy frozen food, you cook
Yeah.
it, or you like go out to eat. And so that was like, I think that's why again it's just like tell people you're not okay, even if it's just
Yeah.
one person, like even if it's your mom or your dad or like your best friend, or even if it's like your therapist, just like having one person know that you're not okay, I swear is like, so they can like be on the lookout for you, is so important.
I have a not a code word, but like I guess it's a code word emoji with one of my friends where because sometimes you don't want to share that you're like in a loop or like not feeling great and there's
Mhm.
like a little self-judgment, and she and I will like text each other every so often like this emoji, and it's like, okay, help me without me having to say I need help, because that's another thing I'm dealing with of like
Mhm.
saying I need help and that being
Mhm.
like not a bad thing to say. So I don't know if that's helpful for any of y'all, but
No,
a
that's
code
so
word
helpful.
That's
emoji.
I mean,
interesting.
that even
Code emoji.
that's smart. I mean,
Yeah.
even the other day, like you remember with me and you, like with me and Piera, like something happened, and like one of my family members passed away the other day, and like in my mind I'm like, I need to just get all this stuff out. I'm going to do it all myself. I'm not going to tell anyone. And it's crazy because like I mean, I literally have a mental health podcast and I did it the other day. So it's like, you know, I mean, that's why going back to like we're not professionals. We're all like learning here. I just think it helps to hear other people's journeys because so many people haven't even started their journey yet, you know?
Yeah. I think starting the journey
So
is probably the hardest thing. I think
I agree.
man, when I started going to therapy for real, it was like after a pretty bad episode of just like, oh, I'm not okay. Like I'm this is bad, you know? And I just couldn't handle it anymore. And it was just sort of one of those things where I got to a point I was just like, all right, this is affecting literally everyone around me and I don't have a handle on it anymore and I need help. And um I wasn't making that much money and I was so terrified of therapists not being able to afford therapists. But then I found out therapists like that are learning, that are like just trying to get hours, and you know they have sliding scales so you can like afford
Sliding scales,
therapy.
baby.
Yeah, sliding scales, baby. So like you can really like find a therapist that matches you and is working under another licensed therapist that you know is just the same. You go into a room, you go to the waiting room, you see everyone else that's meeting with their therapist. We're all on sliding scales and we can actually afford therapy. And I think that was the thing where it was like, okay, like I'm still going to bounce around. I went to Kaiser for a hot second. Not a good
Oh my
idea.
God, same.
Yeah, not a good idea. And yeah, it was just like like hopping in and sort of like laughing at yourself, not laughing, but sort of like looking at yourself and being like, okay, like this is ridiculous. Like I'm in therapy. Like why do I need it? And then you start going and then the therapist is sort of like, thank God you're here.
Oh my God, yeah.
That's so yeah,
You gotta like
starting's
think
a
of it as
big
like Tony Soprano. If Tony Soprano can do it, we can all do
yeah.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Gosh.
how did you find the therapist with the sliding scale? Like, so I actually still am with Kaiser, but I like yelled at them and was like, I need a better therapist. And they
Mhm.
actually let me go out of the Kaiser universe in order to find my
Network,
therapist. And I out of network. There we go. But she
Yeah.
actually works on a sliding scale as well. But I know that's how I got mine. But how did you find yours?
Yeah, I mean, so I found mine through a friend, and basically, it was one of those things where I was going to Kaiser. I was meeting once every 6 weeks. It wasn't
Yeah.
working out. So then actually I went to the same I think he was a clinical social worker. No shade on them, but for me it wasn't working exactly correct. And I don't really know the difference, but basically it was like I went to him for a long time and it wasn't really working out. I went through some big stuff. And then I was like, all right, I need a different therapist. And then I asked a friend and she was like, oh, I have a therapist that like you might want to meet with. And so I met with them. And then I met with another person. And so it was like one or two changes. And I kept on mentioning each time, like, listen, I don't have money for this. Like, this is not something that I can afford. And then they just say like, oh, I'm on a sliding scale, like that kind of stuff. Um so I think just being truthful with the professionals, like just being like, listen, I can't afford this and I need
Mhm.
help, so can you help me, basically? And you meet once every 2 weeks, or once a month, and then go on from there.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of surprising that they're like you can say that and they can try to work with you because that's literally their job is to help you.
Yeah.
My EMDR therapist was like that as well. Like she's like, here's my rate, but like if you can't afford that, I
Yeah.
will work with you. And I
Yeah.
feel like that them like her saying that to me made me feel like, oh, okay, like it's okay that I can't like afford this like the full rate or whatever it was, because
Yeah.
it's also like a little ego bruising of like, I can't afford this thing. Like,
Yeah.
do I deserve this
Well,
thing? But yeah.
that's actually how I found out about disassociating too, because I looked at my therapist and I was like, I'm not listening to you right now. I can't hear you. I don't know what's happening. This is the biggest problem that I think I had with my other therapist, right? It was me. It wasn't them. It was me, because I wasn't being truthful in therapy. So for me,
Yes.
sitting in those therapy sessions and disassociating the entire time and not telling them about it, that was the thing that was actually holding me back in these sessions. So when I
my gosh,
finally said to my therapist, the third one that I had in like 3 years, when I finally looked at them and I was like, I don't give a flying fuck what you're like, what is happening to me right now? And it was one of those things where she was like, what do you mean? And then we started talking about it and she was like, oh, you're disassociating. And I just could not believe that it was real. So it's just like, it's so incredible.
It's so funny too, because I hit the wall with my therapist as well, because when I first started seeing her, I think it was almost like 4 years ago now, after I went through 2 therapists. So she was my second one. And I remember we were talking about something, and I remember having this like thought in my head, which was like, do I tell her about this? Like I felt really uncomfortable telling her about it. I didn't trust her, but I was like, yo, like, and it was something having to do with one of my exes. And I was like, just tell her about it. Like, if anyone's going to understand and be able to like hold your secret, like, how is she going to help you if she doesn't know like every single fucked up thing you've ever been through? And so I think like the step one is like finding the right, step one is noticing that you need something. Step 2 is actually trying to find the therapist and knowing that like you have to go through a bunch of different therapists to find the one that's right for you. And I think step 3 is literally being like, okay, I'm going to drop everything at the door and I'm going to be as open and honest with this person as I possibly can in order to like
Mm-hmm.
actually help myself. But like the entire process, you have to help yourself. No one else is going to help you. So it's something where you
Yeah.
have to just have that ability to be like, I got this. I can do it. No matter what I'm going through right now, like this is going to help me in the end. So
Yeah. I mean,
I definitely,
I think the biggest thing that I learned about going to therapy was just sort of like that honesty thing that you were just talking about, Harley, was just sort of like, you know, even in therapy that I'm in now, like it's one of those things where like immediately when I feel something, I just say it instead of holding it.
Mhm.
If you're like, if like, you know, my wife and I are in couples therapy because I knew that we needed that because it had become a thing that was just sort of like, we need help, you know, and we've been in it for a while. And I was like, if we're going to have kids, we got to go to couples therapy. Like, there's no way I can deal with this shit without a therapist. So now in therapy, it's like, if I get annoyed, I say it, right? And then the therapist, the amazing person that she is, holds it. And then we talk about it later, or like we talk about it in that session, or it's like, okay, like checking in. So it is that honesty is such a big thing to get over. I mean, talking to a person that you don't know and then just going, oh, that guy fucking sucks, you know, like, and just saying it, you know, or like anything. It's just like crazy. It's so difficult and so important in therapy.
Oh yeah.
wait,
Facing
I have to,
yourself. Oof.
I have to ask,
Yes.
what's your therapist's name?
My
Just the first
therapist's
name.
is Sydney Raz. Sydney Raz.
No, what's your actual therapist
SIDNEYRAZ.
name?
I don't want to tell you my therapist's name.
We
I
like
feel
to
like
give
that
shout outs
breaks.
to therapists.
Yeah.
So like we always
Listen,
say like
if
shout out
my
Amy, shout out Sarah.
okay, all right. Shout out Corinne, and shout out Danny. That changed my life.
Shout out Corinne and shout out Danny.
Yeah. I
We're
think they'll
team
hear this.
therapy.
Yeah, I don't know if that breaks the law what I just did, but I don't think it does.
No.
Is it the first name?
The best part is I'm pretty sure that my therapist has no idea that I have a podcast. I mean, her name is Amy.
I told
like a
mine.
lot of people. Oh, I told mine, but I don't think my therapist, I honestly, a part of me also thinks my therapist just like goes, okay, Harley, you know, I love her. And I
Yeah.
think I love that she does that because like my personality is super like I don't care that she's like, whatever, Harley. And so like, I swear to God, like, I'm sure if I sent it to her, she would listen to it, but like, she has no
Are they
idea
allowed
that I give
to?
her shout outs.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I
I don't think
gotta
they're
say,
allowed to.
I gotta say, one of the funniest people in my life is my therapist. Like, she fucking kills me every session. I would just be there. I'm like, oh, for sure. Like, like it is so, she wrecks. Like in my personal stand-up comedy, like theater, like she's crushing it every time. And I just like, I'm just there just watching, like, man, you are really funny. like it's
Oh my
great.
God. Oh my
Yeah.
God. I think
So-
Amy literally Amy lets me ramble on and on and on. I think Amy's definitely thinks I'm a little cray cray, but honestly,
Oh,
like
sure.
I love when people think I'm a little cray cray. So I think I like that
Yeah.
about Amy.
Absolutely.
What about you, Kiara?
Yeah.
I don't know what I mean, I told her about the podcast and she's like, that's great. How's it going? Like she actually asked me
Yeah.
from our first our first session to our last session together to this one. I was like, we're on our third episode. And she's like, that's great. How do you feel? And I'm like, good. Cause like I'm working on my voice and like projecting and like feeling more confident. So she was like, good, like gold star, you know, but genuinely, I think she's genuinely proud of me.
We have comedic therapists apparently, but it makes sense for Sid and I. We're a little too, we're a little wild children over here, so it makes sense.
Being internet famous sometimes too is like you walk into therapy and then we get to sort of like going, and then sometimes your therapist is like, oh, by the way, my sister-in-law sent a video of you And then you had then like the therapist is always like, and I just said that's so funny, like
Yeah, they have to
like,
make believe they don't know you,
like
right? 'Cause
she knows things.
Yeah, but she doesn't know. She can't tell.
Hey, I
like
think
can't
that
tell people.
goes to show that this is why you need to be honest with your therapist. They won't even flinch when they know you.
No.
They'll pretend like they
Therapists are
don't
the
know
best.
you.
They will.
They
My
are.
couples therapist, when I was in couples therapy, I think that was one of my questions. She's like, yeah, if I see you out at the farmer's market, I will not acknowledge you.
Yeah.
Oh my
Same.
God. I'm like the opposite. If I see Amy out, I mean, she'll probably be like, I've never seen her out, but I think if I saw her, I'd be like, Amy. She'd probably be like, oh
Sometimes
my God, why is
I
this
saw
girl
one
talking
of
to me?
I saw one of my therapists out in public, and we just sort of like eyed each other, and then I just sort of walked away. And, it was like, now we're just gonna walk
man.
around each other for a little bit. It was like an event. It was like a thing, and I was like, hey.
That's amazing. Well, I think that this has been great, and I would love to end this podcast episode on just like any advice, Sid, that you have for anybody that's listening who's maybe who like felt like you before you started going to therapy. Like, what is your piece of advice for anybody that's maybe scared or like even just scared to tell somebody that they're not okay? Like, what do you have? What do you have to say? I don't know. I know it's a deep question. Putting you on the spot here.
It is a pretty deep question. But I think that mostly it's just sort of like acknowledging that you're not okay is really hard, right? And then taking the steps to name it, and then taking the steps to process the naming. I think processing the naming is something that is sort of overlooked a lot. And I think that like it's important to sort of like understand it and then really change the way you exist in the world, which is just like really fucking hard. But yeah, I think just like making sure that you can name it, saying it out loud so that other people can name it for you, and then once you do name it, understanding it and sort of like practicing the change. That's a really hard one. Practice the change, everyone. That's what I'll leave with. Practice the change.
I love that. I'd say maybe just while you're not feeling okay, listen to oh my God, why My Chemical Romance. Just like that was like my thing back in the day. I would listen to I'm Not Okay. I'd be like, I'm not okay. Oh my God, that was so high pitched. That was even worse than Fran Drescher's voice, even though I love her voice. Anyways, listen to that,
President
guys,
Sack.
while you're realizing you're not okay.
That's a great way to end the podcast.
Well, thanks so much for joining us, Sid. We really
Thank
appreciate it. And
you.
we're so
Thank you
proud
for
of
having me.
you for putting
Yeah, we're really
yourself
proud.
out there. And
Thank you.
keep up the great work, you little internet famous person, you.
Yeah, and
By the way,
hopefully,
I just want everyone to know. Oh, yeah. No, I was going to
Oh,
say,
we'll
I want
talk-
everyone to know that
I'll-
Sid's been doing this like since like high school. Like this is not a phase for Sid. He's literally
not a
always
phase.
been this way. So everyone should go check out his
There's-
very useful things that I wish I knew before I was 30 stuff, because it is very good. And honestly, there's a lot of things that I have discovered through it that I have no idea either.
Same.
There's some footage somewhere of me in high school on the morning announcements that is going to leak one day that I don't want to leak, but it's going to happen.
So if anyone
let's
out
find it,
here
everyone.
is from our high school and knows how to
James
get
Madison.
a handle of this videotape, please contact us immediately.
James Madison High School. I graduated 07.
You're just giving them the information.
Just in case anyone wants to find Annoying Man. That's what it's called, that I'm scared of everyone seeing.
Oh my God, please.
So don't do that.
Thanks everyone in advance. Please at least send it to me if you find it. But anyways, all right. Well, thanks so much, guys. Enjoy your party, Sid, and we will talk to you, I'm sure, a lot more.
Bye. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. I'm not okay. Oh my God, that was so high pitched.